Hello class, this is Mr. Rendell. Today we're going to be talking about place value and decimals today, and especially adding and subtracting. I hope that you've seen a lot of this material before. It's going to be important that you try these questions out without the help of a calculator, so please make sure you try them at least and make sure you know what they're finding. Then by all means, if you need to, you could check an answer if you want. First thing is we need to be able to speak kind of in quote-unquote number language. If you've never been told this, I mean, mathematics is really a type of foreign language if you really think about it. Uh, there's a lot of terminology, there's a lot of definitions that you have to understand, there's a lot of wording that only works in mathematics. So understanding how to speak in number language or mathematics is important. So if I just gave you the number that's on the screen here, you'd read it 35,200 or 421, excuse me. Notice there's no and in that statement. And I think that sometimes we throw that in there. So for example, you might hear me say 35,421. That's not technically correct mathematically. So if you look at the place value ideas, the word and should represent something specific, and that's the decimal point. You're pretty comfortable with things to the left side, okay, the millions, 100,000s, 10,000s, etc., all the way down to the units or ones place. It's the right side past the decimal place that normally causes the problem. First thing is the tenths place, so it's something out of 10, and then hundreds, thousands, 10,000s, etc. So the next couple slides have a lot of information and how to write things out. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on it other than the fact that you want to make sure you know how to write it. Okay, so make sure you understand how to read things mathematically. I read things similar to what you do. So for example, on this first question here, 400.17 or 400.17. That's how I often read those things as well. But you need to make sure you understand how to read them in a mathematical way, which would be 400 and 1700s. So please keep that in mind as you're looking at these questions. And you go down the list, you can see what they are. I will comment on the last one. The last one should be 5,010,206 and 127 10,000s. Just read that number, cover up the decimal point and say, all right, what is that number? And you should see what's left, and it should be in the 10,000s place. Writing numbers based on what's said to you. I don't think you're often in life going to see written down and then write and tell me what the number is. You're probably going to see someone speak it though, and then you have to explain what the number is. So you should be able just to say it out loud to yourself and just start writing. So 332 and that's the decimal point 5 in the tens place. 2,016 and 3 10,000s. Now that last one, you need 3 to be in the last spot. So whatever that number is, it needs to end up in that location and then work backwards in order to find that answer. Comparing decimals, you just look for the bigger number. This should be simple as long as you keep adding zeros. So you have to kind of line them up, kind of like what we're going to talk about with adding and subtracting. But you want to make sure that you line up the decimal places to figure out what you're looking at. So 0.8 is not as big as 0.85 because 0.85 is larger than 0.80. And if you go down the list, you just want to add zeros in case you need to when comparing decimals. Ordering should be the same idea. Go place by place. Okay, so in the first one, 0.01 is smaller than 0.012 because that first one would be 0.010. But something like 1.2 has to be larger and the other ones as well. In the second one, 0.499 is smaller, even though it has more places than 1/2 or 0.5. That 0.4 automatically makes it smaller than the 0.5 one. So you're going to have to be able to order numbers as you're looking at some of these situations. Just make sure you're careful on that as you're ordering. In order to figure out what the answers are for questions ordering least to greatest. Typically, they're least to greatest. Sometimes teachers pull fast ones, say greatest to least, so make sure you read directions. I love when students make sure they read directions to find answers, so please make sure you do that. Rounding. Why do we round decimals? Now that is a good question. Why do you think we round decimals? Okay, when we talk about rounding, we round up or down. We round up when the next digit is 5 or greater, and round down when it's less than 5. So make sure you're looking at that idea as you're looking at these situations. So when you're rounding up, the next digit should be 5 or greater. When you round down, it should be less than 5. So rounding to the nearest tenth, 2.6, because the next number is a 1. The next number is a 5, so you round up to 2 for the hundredths place. Thousandths, you're going to go over to the fourth spot, so tenths, hundredths, thousandths, 10,000ths, and it's a 0. So you round down in order to figure out that it's 2.615. Adding and subtracting. I've got a couple questions with adding and subtracting here. I'm not going to go over each individual piece other than to say the following. You line up the decimal point, you put zeros in. So the first one works out really nice. The second one, you got to put a 0 after the 6, and then you just line up the columns. There's other ways you could add and subtract, I guess, if you wanted to. So if you've learned some other different option, let me know, and I'd be interested to learn more about it. The last one, 6.2 minus 1.48, you got to make sure you add a 0 after that 2, and then borrow if you need to. Plan on asking some questions if you don't understand that piece, or shoot me an email, or if you're in class, make sure you ask about that if you're not sure about how that's lining up in the last question. The other questions that I have here are evaluating. So evaluating is just a way to say find the answer when you're combining terms in like an expression. And it says evaluate the sum or difference, and they give you an x and y. That's just substitution. For the first one, it's going to be 5.7 plus that x value of 62.72, and you just add them together. Notice it doesn't matter which number's first. Some of you may put 5.7 first. Others of you put the 62.72 first. It won't matter which one's first in addition, okay, because the commutative property says it doesn't matter. In subtraction in the second one, it has to be the y value minus the 10.92. So make sure y is first, then 10.92. As most people are already aware, subtraction typically is more challenging than addition. It has a little bit more rules. You got to make sure you know which one's first. You got to borrow when needed because of the place values. Addition typically is easier for students than subtraction. You'll notice the next one has x's and y's in both of them. So the first one, x plus y, you got to do that first, and then take that number minus the 16.38. Notice how much work I showed on that question. You're going to want to make sure that you practice that. I know it's a tough time right now because I'm not really in front of you looking at that, especially for you virtual learners, but you want to make sure that you're looking at that in the correct sense of what am I needing to do first? Can I show that to Mr. Rendell and then do the second one? For the second version of the question, the y minus 10 plus x, the mistake is, what do you think people try to do? They try to take 10 plus x first. That's the mistake. You got to make sure you go left to right because adding and subtraction, one's not more important than the other, it's just which one comes first. So you got to take y minus 10. Now, I think you could get away with finding the answer without showing work on y minus 10. Okay, so 21.87 minus 10 should be 11.87. No problem. And then plus the 62.72. Now, many of you are going to invert that. You're going to put the 62 number first because you're used to having the bigger number on top. It doesn't matter which one's first in addition, though. Okay, commutative property of addition says it doesn't matter which one's first. Okay, so when you're doing the commutative property, okay, either one can go first in addition. Doesn't work so well in subtraction. Okay, so that's the video for today. Hopefully you answered all the questions. Don't forget about the homework check, and then your homework is this decimal worksheet, adding and subtracting. Make sure you work on showing your steps. We might take a few pictures maybe for your homework check, so make sure you've got answers and you've written them down, and then maybe we'll take a quick picture of some of that work, maybe trying that out for next week. Have a good day, everybody.